Alright guys, time to grab it back again today. Hope you're enjoying your day so far, and today we're going to talk about a major overhaul that Treyarch came out with yesterday, which is pretty much going to change up the entirety of our competitive play plays in the current iteration of the title. The FFAR nerf is the key one, a number of other things to go through as well, and exactly what might the meta look like as a result of this change. We've seen the first week the FFAR has pretty much been the dominant weapon with the Mp5 nerf that came out a few days ago. The pros were not particularly happy with the situation, the fact that, okay, you're nerfing the only viable SMG, we're just going to have a Black Ops 1 4 FAMAS meta in the game. The FFAR has been pretty much ruined, but you guys can have your thoughts in the comment section below on whether you think it could still be viable at some point, or will Treyarch reverse these changes to some degree, and what's the meta going to look like now? Like if you guys enjoy the video, subscribe if you are new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much for doing that. And before getting into today's video, I thought this was kind of interesting, the fact that this AK-47 with certain attachments actually has negative recoil, and Parasite comes out and says, okay, it's probably bugged. Little did people know that a few hours later, the AK-47 might be considered the strongest assault rifle in the entire game. This is how things went yesterday. Treyarch announced that they were going to be dropping Nuketown in just a couple of days' time, and Charlie Intel says, look, a new patch update is now live. No, no announcements yet on exactly what is going on. But the first thing that was kind of talked about was the aim response curve type option has been added in the settings. A lot of pro players very happy about this one, so having kind of interesting opinions that we'll go into. And as Shotty says, dynamic is back. So if you guys played Modern Warfare, you might well know that the aim assist response curve was an option in that game for the first time ever. Typically it's just been standard aim assist, it's either on or off, but last game you got the option to have linear aim assist, dynamic aim assist, or standard aim assist. And a lot of the pros liked the dynamic option, and that seems to be well, what is now back in the title as we will look at here. Kind of interesting. Trey says he's back. Accuracy actually says yay, every single person shooting absolute laser beams again, almost implying maybe that he thinks that it almost reduces the skill gap, this dynamic, in the fact that it enables people with maybe not the best aim to actually still snap onto targets. Who really knows? But the pros certainly like it. I'm not really going to go into, I'm not going to pretend I know exactly all the intricacies of how the dynamic movement works, but this is kind of what Exclusive Ace came out with last year. The fact is, well, the dynamic aim, you can have relatively small thumbstick movements, but high rotation speed initially, meaning that you kind of get, you get more snappy aim initially, but then at kind of the mid-ranges, you have a little bit more control. So the pros certainly seem to like it. If you guys haven't tried it out, I'd recommend you go and do so. But yeah, as I said, I'm not going to pretend I know all the intricacies of exactly how this stuff works, but it is now back in the game. Now also people are talking about at the time, the FFAR, it seems to have been nerfed, it seems to have a considerable nerf to its recoil. What exactly is going on here, but how significant is it going to be? And as Method says, look how they massacred my boy, because it turns out to be pretty significant indeed, as we'll look at. The other thing just to mention really quick before that is that, as Exclusive Ace says, the Mp5 nerf we talked about a couple of days ago was actually completely reverted, but this was unintentional, and you know, they reinstated a couple of hours later just because I imagine they had the old code still in the game files or something as they were rendering this new update, and well, then they actually reverted the Mp5 on accident, but it is now back to where it was, as Charlie Intel just said. But the FFAR was the key one. So as Exclusive Ace says, these are the changes. The M16 had a nerfed range, relatively significant but not too bad. The AUG, you know, also in a similar boat. The FFAR's nerfed range was pretty significant, from 38 meters down to 25.4, and the crucial part, way more horizontal recoil. And if there's one recoil that you don't want your weapon to have, it's horizontal, right? Because vertical, you just pull down. The PPSH in World War II, not too bad to deal with. Horizontal is where things do get very tricky indeed. And response curves also added, as we just did discuss. So Breaking Point go into detail here, talking about exactly what has changed in this patch. And as you can see on screen, so the damage was reduced by 3.6%, the damage range by 33.3%, the vehicle damage as well. The key one really is down here under the accuracy, right? The horizontal recoil control used to be 40, now it's 210. This is like a negative change, right? So effectively, the horizontal recoil has been increased by 525%, which is, well, pretty damn drastic, let's not deny it, right? And a lot of people saying, like, how the hell do they mess the gun up so much that you have to nerf it by 525% to actually make it, well, make it in a fair spot? A lot of people would say now that the weapon is actually just straight up too weak. And as JP Krez says, it's safe to say the FFAR is dead to competitive play for the time being, because who knows, maybe they went too far on this one. Maybe Treyarch will dial it back, right, and rebuff it, I suppose, to some degree. And this is then what it looks like in a bit more detail. So FFAR horizontal recoil, and as you can see, it's doing a lot of recoiling right here. It kind of is the Maddox from Black Ops 4, but even worse, somewhat difficult to control. It goes up to the right and then over towards the left. What you will notice here is that it is very consistent, right? It goes up to the right and then it cuts back to the left, and it just does this every single time. The recoil is very significant. It's not out out of the question that someone could learn this recoil pattern and implement it where like pull down and left on the stick and then pull down and right on the stick. It's very possible that that could be done, but I imagine that there is still some inconsistency in this recoil pattern. It'll make it very difficult to deal with at long range, especially given the other good assault rifles as it stands in the game right now. You've got the Krig in the game, you've got the AK-47, you've also got those tactical rifles that we looked at, even though they're kind of gentleman's agreemented from competitive. But what do you guys think about this change run? It's pretty significant. I don't think the FFAR is really going to be seen in competitive play from now on. It may also be a discussion we have to have about how this affects some of the teams. We talked a few days ago how this might really help Chicago and OpTic in the sense that Dashy on the FFAR seems like a good situation to have him on that flex role, but now it might be a completely different meta. I think Bids was talking about the possibility of a 3 MP5, 1 Krig or 1 AK-47 meta, something in that ballpark, and Decimate said a similar thing, like Krig, MP5 meta might be the way to go now. And does that necessarily favor some teams that would prefer a more, flex on an FFAR weapon? Who really knows? It might be a discussion we have to have, but then again, maybe that discussion would be reverted if they do end up rebuffing the FFAR, because maybe they took this one step too far, someone could certainly argue. The other thing that they did as well, so they did a few other things that's here mapped out in this article, the aim assist response curve, as we just looked at, some of the streak point changes as well, if you guys want to pause the video if you weren't aware that they did all of this stuff. A few other things as well to some of the equipment buffs that we're going to look at in just a second, but they also did make some changes to the bomb site locations on Moscow, and I'm kind of impressed the fact that we're a week into the game and they're already making a lot of updates with competitive play in mind. We talked about the Mp5 nerf a couple of days ago. Pros weren't too happy about it and were saying, okay, why is this being nerfed? We kind of didn't ask for this. The FFAR seems to be the most powerful gun, and just a few days later, after saying that, okay, yeah, we're not going to do any more patch updates until December the 10th for Season 1, they drop an absolute massive overhaul as we've seen in the last 24 hours or so. So it certainly seems like a lot of this is geared towards competitive play, and now they're also changing bomb site locations on maps just a few days into the title. I'm pretty impressed about this. A-bomb used to be over here to the left, it's now in the middle. Not sure this change makes too much difference, but it was kind of awkward over here. And also the B-bomb has changed quite significantly to now be inside this building. Some people suggesting maybe it could have been outside on the streets, but okay, it seems pretty reasonable to me. There actually is a line of sight you can get from under this truck onto the bomb if you guys want to exploit that. I saw Slacked using it yesterday, and as I say, look, Trek popping off with the S&D update 7 days into the game. It's promising stuff, in my opinion. I think, despite this change maybe not being the best from some angles, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for Call of Duty more generally, trying to get a more solidified meta for the next season. So these are some of the other changes that Corona CDL Intel points out. One of them is the search and destroy issue, so addressing an issue where defusing the bomb could take longer than the intended 7.5 seconds. I wasn't aware this was the case, but if you guys ran into this, apparently this has been fixed now. We talked yesterday as well about the hackers, but also that glitch that Kenny and co are experiencing, spawning on top of the map on checkpoints, CDL hardpoints. That is actually going to be a competitive mode, as we're going to talk about later today, at least in the 1.0 rule set. Addressed an issue where players would spawn outside of the intended play space, so apparently that is now, not the case any longer. And also, so we adjusted some spawns in multiplayer game modes that could result in players spawning above the grounds. I think a lot of players would hope that the hardpoint spawns are adjusted to some degree relatively soon, but also added score streak cost overrides to custom games. We talked a couple of days ago about how pros are banning streaks from competitive play because, well, they're not actually really streaks, right? It's difficult to tell when you're going to get them and when you are not, but apparently you can just have cost overrides now, to the point where if you just get this amount of score in a row, then all of a sudden you just earn your streaks, kind of how it was in a traditional game. I imagine that's what this means. I think that'll be a step in the right direction and may mean that we do indeed get streaks into the game. A couple of other things to mention real quick. Looney says, wait, did they change how fast you throw grenades? Such a weird change. So apparently you now throw Semtexes and stuff faster than you used to, which certainly seems to be a step in the right direction to me, because it did seem to take a little bit too long. And the final thing to mention here is about the slide cancelling. So as Insight says, anyone else keep jumping trying to slide cancel? It seems that whole slide jump thing that you would do in Modern Warfare and early in Black Ops Cold War doesn't really work anymore to the same degree. And as Amelia says, look, they've patched it, and so you can't slide cancel to the same degree. And Doug says a similar thing as well. Did they mess with slide cancelling? Every time I slide jump, it's making me jump instead of slide cancel. And apparently what you're meant to do now is slide, then ADS, then jump, and then apparently that's the way to go. But let me know if you guys have any other thoughts on how you're meant to do that, and really your thoughts on this patch in general, because some major overhauls, frankly, for competitive play that we talked about today. And later today, we're going to talk about the rule set, because the pros, once again, not particularly happy with this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm know you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well and help grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always. Take care, and I will see you next time.
Always went.
On this fucking deep right. I've been sniped. What is going on this map?
You're our last stay on mission.
On bomb too.
Only one hostile remains.
Is it?
Phoenix.
BND.
Hey,
Oh,
it's
I
different
can
way.
relate.
Mate, did he just run across
What's
the
Bance
catwalk?
doing, mate?